Hi, I'm here to make reply video to this video that you can see right now on my screen, which is why Act 3 of Dragon Quest XI is terrible. I'll just tell something before we start. I'm not a native English speaker and I have no script at all. I'll just hear what he has to say. I already watched the video, so I know the gist of it. I'll hear what he has to say and reply on the things that are factually wrong to clarify how things went down in the Dragon Quest XI storyline as someone that platinumed the vanilla version back in 2018 and platinumed the 11S version 6 months ago when it came out, and is also almost done with the Japanese 3DS version that I played in Japanese without actually having no knowledge of Japanese, just to see how different it was and to see 3D Tickington and the other stuff that is exclusive to 3DS. But that's not the point of this video. Let's just go to what this video says that it's factually wrong, and let's see how we can correct it and explain how things actually went and why Act 3 of Dragon Quest XI, in my opinion, and that is my opinion, is actually amazing. What is not an opinion is the things that he says that are actually wrong. Those didn't happen, aren't that way, and let's see what he says. Let's go.
Hi. Welcome to a video where I talk about how much I love Dragon Quest XI, and how much I hate Act 3 of the game, because it is astoundingly bad, and makes no sense. Let's get right into it.
Okay, just here at the start I'll say that I will not reply to his opinions. If he says, I hate this thing because I don't like it, because of any reason that is personal to his own taste, I won't reply to that, even if I happen to love it, because that's not the point. I don't want to judge his opinions, I want to correct what he said that is factually wrong. Let's go.
Massive spoiler alert. Part 1. The basics. In the beginning of Act 3, the party find a special gear in the rubble we know later as the Islands of Havens above. They decide to take it to a mysterious tower spotted in one of the whaleways, and use it as a key. Inside, there is allegedly some form of magic that can revive the dead, and the party want very badly to bring Veronica back. Once they reach the top, they meet the Timekeeper, who clarifies that the magic is actually the Time Sphere, and that it can technically bring back the dead. Like, really technically. She says that it's possible to break the Time Sphere and return to a particular point in time where...
Okay, I stopped here because here in his own video he shows a scene that we'll refer to later that contradicts what he will say. We see here, to take a sword to the sphere would be to erase those moments, to return to the time of the last intact memory. Why is that important? Remember these words. To erase those moments, to return to the time of the last intact memory. It's what the Timekeeper says, and if you played the game, spoiler alert, you know that the Timekeeper is Serenica. So remember these words of Serenica, of the Timekeeper. To take a sword to the sphere would be to erase those moments and to return to the time of the last intact memory.
Where the loved one was alive. However, she makes it clear that it will not be the same world.
To lose time is to lose life.
Here is his second mistake. He uses this sentence to say that it's not the same world. But that's not actually what the Timekeeper says. The Timekeeper says, to lose time, even this word, to lose time is to lose much. He doesn't just change timeline, he loses time. That time is erased, deleted, never existed anymore. this world, this reality, this will be lost to you. And that is not all. So this time won't exist anymore. She says this explicitly. In this sentence, in the sentence before, where I stopped the video, and in the other sentences as well. I have, if you give me a sec, yeah. There's another sentence that maybe isn't included in this video, which is, if your companion is to be restored to you, time itself must be destroyed. Again, time is destroyed. You don't change timeline, you don't skip in an alternative universe, you don't go back in time and then come back to your fixed timeline. No, time just gets erased, deleted, completely cancelled. So yeah, we'll see that he will argue that the hero goes back in an alternative timeline or in an alternative universe, which is not the case.
This world, this reality, these will be lost to you.
If the party were to break the sphere, they would be transported to an alternate reality where that person lived. So yeah.
As you can see, he said that if the sphere gets broken, the hero will be transported to an alternative reality. No, that doesn't happen. There's only one reality, it's the world the heroes live in, and what you do is just erase the time after the fall of Yggdrasil and go back to before Yggdrasil's fall.
That person is definitely not coming back in the original timeline.
Again, coming back in the original timeline. No, there's no original timeline to come back to. That timeline doesn't exist. There's only one timeline. You just, story was like this, you go back, and then it's not like you go in another path of time. It's just you rewrite history. You write history again, and if you went like this and then come back to this point never existed anymore.
You're fucking dead.
What a scam. But seriously, the timekeeper is essentially describing relativity. This means that time cannot be reversed. It is impossible.
Time is relative.
No. Again, he puts words in the mouth of the timekeeper which she doesn't say when she said literally the opposite. Time travel has no universal answer. Of course, it doesn't exist, at least until today, in our real world. It's a product of fiction, and in fiction, every writer can give the rules that he prefers. In Dragon Ball, for example, from the same drawer, from the same artist, Akira Toriyama, which in Dragon Ball is also writer, in Dragon Quest is only the character designer, and doesn't write any story. In Dragon Ball, time works differently. Trunks, future Trunks, goes back to the timeline when androids didn't win and Goku didn't die, to save the world, creating an alternative dimension where the androids didn't win and Goku didn't die. And that's Dragon Ball, a manga from the same artist. In Dragon Quest, things work differently. It's the writer that chooses the rules to give to time travel in his own fictionalized universe. In Dragon Quest VII, which is another Dragon Quest, so the same series, time works even differently. In the sense that, yes, the timeline is just one, there are no alternative universes or alternative timelines, but you can freely travel between past and present, and what you fix in the past will be fixed in the present. So you, for example, an island was destroyed, you go back in the past, save that island, go back to the present, and you find that island because in the past it was never destroyed. So it's kinda similar, but removes the fact that time travel in Dragon Quest XI is just one-sided. You can only go from the future to the past, and then whatever happens, you have to relive what is happening, because you can't go back to to a future that doesn't exist anymore. While in Dragon Quest VII, you have a present and a past, and you can go in the past to fix that present and then come back to the present. But yeah, in both chapters, in both games, there is only one timeline, a single timeline, and things even in the same series work differently. In Dragon Ball, as we saw, they work in another way entirely, and different timelines, different universes actually do exist, as we later even saw in Dragon Ball Super. So there is no universal rule for time travel in fiction. Any writer can choose his own rules, which may or may be more, how can I say, realistic. Like, for example, I think that if time travel existed and was a thing in our real world, I think it would pretty much work like in Dragon Quest XI. Like, you can go back, but then when you change things, you can't just go back to your time, go back to the present. You have to live again all the time that is missing from the point you went back to the point you left the present. And since you changed things can be entirely different.
Okay, it can stretch and it can squeeze, but it can't run backwards.
That's why she offers the far more irresponsible route. I don't know.
Again, Serena says turn back time, not go back in an alternative universe. Turn back time, rewind time, delete the time that we don't like, and go back to a point where we can fix the timeline, which is only one timeline.
Maybe she figured the Luminary would be like, wow, that sucks, and solves literally nothing, since Veronica would still be dead in this reality. But
again, there is no this reality. Veronica would survive in the only timeline that there is.
But, you know, the Timekeeper also says that the Luminary is the only one who has the power to break the sphere. So not only is time travel an ineffective, is the only one, but, you know, the Timekeeper also says that the Luminary...
Yeah, okay, I stopped, I rewinded because I was afraid I was missing some important dialogue, but it is not the case.
Who has the power to break the sphere. So not only is time travel an ineffective way to revive Veronica, it would also mean the party would lose the Luminary, since he would be the only one quote-unquote time traveling. After he breaks the sphere,
there is no quote-unquote because the hero is actually time traveling. Or, if we prefer, he is keeping his conscience, his knowledge and his tools, because that's, of course, the important part. The hero goes back to before Yggdrasil's fall, but already knows what is gonna happen, how it's gonna happen. He has the new Sword of Shadows. He knows that Jasper has dark powers. He knows that Carnelian is actually Mordegon. He knows what he has to do to avoid it. He is stronger, of course, because let's not forget that in Act 2 he lived a lot of difficult battles and even defeated Mordegon himself. So yeah, the hero is keeping... He is basically the same hero that lived through Act 2, so which is why you are the only one to keep your levels, even as a gameplay mechanic. You are, I don't know, level 55, and then you see that all your other party members are level 33. Why? Because they didn't live through Act 2, you did. So you have all that knowledge, all that skill, all that experience, you know everything that went wrong in Act 1, and you are there to fix it with your new strength, your new knowledge and your new tools.
The party are left behind, now having lost 2 team members. But it's okay, because the Luminary has now jumped into a dimension where Veronica never died and everything is a little bit easier.
Again, I don't have to explain anymore why he's wrong and there's no alternative dimension.
Good for him. I make this sound a lot more personal than it actually is, but it's just incredibly irritating. The game explicitly says why the alleged time travel will not work, yet still goes through with it.
If your companion is to be restored to you, time itself must be destroyed. What is fun is that he actually used these sentences in his own video to argue the opposite. The timekeeper literally said that time will be destroyed. It won't exist anymore. Act 2 never happened in the fixed timeline, which is the only timeline. You just went back, and then what was after Yggdrasil's fall ended up never happening, except in your memories, because you lived that.
It ends up retconning the majority of very important character development for the party. And not only that, the party in Act 3 is not our party. They are from an alternate reality.
Again, but here he says something that is understandable. The wrong thing, again, is this alternative reality bullshit that is not true. I don't know what the game should have done to let him understand that there is no alternative universe. There is just one timeline, just one reality, and you're deleting what happened after Yggdrasil's fall. It's explicitly stated, not implied, not mentioned in an obscure way. It's literally stated. It's clear, it's said by the timekeeper. And we break the sphere of time, we destroy the sphere of time, we destroy the timeline as it was to go back and fix it and create a new one, but not a new one in the sense of a new alternative universe and a new branching path, but we want to fix the only timeline that there is. What he says that is understandable is that Act 3 indeed erases all the character development that Act 2 had. Serena, Eric, which sacrificed his own memory, Hendrik, which understood why he was wrong and why he was serving evil and tries to make amends for that. So all those story arcs are erased, but let's not forget that we are also erasing some terrible events, like the Hotto storyline, which ends up with the death of both the mother and her son, like the Lonalulu storyline, even though that's kind of a story writing mistake, because Act 3 about the Lonalulu story gives for granted that you chose to not let Michelle die, because if you tell her the truth, and so you tell her that Kai is dead, she will commit suicide. If you lie to her and tell her that Kai is coming, she will just wait for him. So Act 3 makes the mistake of assuming you let her live, while I, and I guess most players, chose to tell her the truth and let her make her choice, which was, of course, suicide. So yeah, what he says is understandable. It's sad that those characters lose those moments of growth, but again, there is a greater good, there is something bigger, some bigger goal that you have to achieve, which is never letting evil take root in the first place, not letting Mordegon win, and erasing all those deaths, all that pain, all that suffering, and make a new world, but it's the same world, where those things never happened, which is of course better than having a world which you saved, okay, but will always be deeply scarred by what happened. those scars, those memories, those pain, those deaths of the loved ones of the regular people of the Dragon Quest XI universe over Erdrea are a tragedy. Imagine if it was your world and you could prevent that. You absolutely would do that. It doesn't matter that you would erase the growth of your personal friend when you can actually avoid millions of deaths.
What a fucking bleak decision. And it adds nothing to the game. It's just an explicitly sloppy idea. But OP, how do you know it's an alternate reality?
As I said, I won't judge his opinions, so if he says I don't like the idea, never mind. Okay, I do.
Because I know how relativity works, and they fucked themselves over when they decided to bring it up.
Again, I don't know what to say anymore. He implies that he knows how relativity works, which is something that all work of fiction related to time travel must take into account. No. If you are a story writer, you decide what the rules of time in your fictional universe are. And Yuji Horii decided that there is no such thing as different timelines, just one timeline that you can fix and erase by going back and destroying the part of it that you don't like. And of course, not everyone can do this, but only the Luminary, which is of course the chosen hero, something who fights for good. So it's not like everyone in Erdrea can just destroy the time sphere and go back in time and change the outcome of their school exam. The hero, for a greater good, he is the only one with the Luminary's power, the chosen one, the embodiment of light and justice. He can go back in time to fix it.
This reality, these will be lost to you.
Also, there are differences in the Act 3 reality. For example, Michelle is not dead, despite having received the wedding veil. We know she died after taking it. We watched her, but in Act 3, returning to the Strand shows her alive and well. She has the veil in her possession, meaning she just took it and swam back. This is more of a superficial...
Okay, this is a mistake, of course. When you see a mistake, you have to admit it is a mistake, because I didn't notice that she had the veil. So that can't happen, of course, because you either gave her the veil and she died, or you lied, she never got the veil, and she survived by waiting for Kai for all eternity, or in this case, until Act 3. So yeah, here we have an undeniable mistake that happened, and yeah, it doesn't really undermine the rest of Act 3, which is actually amazing, and I'll explain why.
Criticism, but in a game where you're constantly bringing party members back from the dead, the decision to make Veronica's revival realistically impossible is, well, stupid. There's also the fact that each Yggdrasil leaf constitutes a life, and yet they're used primarily as revival items in battle. It's just awkwardly lazy. I know Dragon Quest...
Okay, he here criticizes Dragon Quest for something that all JRPGs do, which is the difference between combat death and plot-driven cutscene death. Because of course, any combat death you can just revive using spells or revival items, while cutscenes that are always, in most cases, permanent, and you can't revive that character, or you can't fix what happened, you can't do anything about it. And yeah, almost all JRPGs are guilty of this. Let's take the most famous example probably, which is Final Fantasy VII. Spoiler alert. I won't even say who dies, you either know or you don't, and then I won't spoiler you, but if you know, you know. Again, even in Final Fantasy VII, if some character dies in combat, you throw them a Phoenix Phoenix Tail, Phoenix Wing, I don't remember. When that character dies in the cutscene, they are dead. So it's a non-argument. In JRPGs, just think that when someone dies in combat, he's actually unconscious. Just consider them unconscious. Change that Veronica dies with Veronica is KO, Veronica dropped unconscious, Veronica spent all her strength. Change anything you want with a non-permanent knockout. It's, I don't know, a JRPG cliche, and yeah, we have it here again, and it's kind of weird that Dragon Quest uses the words die and calls the revival in the church resurrection, but again, just retcon in your brain that in combat you just get knocked out, while in cutscenes you actually die.
It isn't Shakespeare, and that the story itself is very simple, but that ends up making it so that character development carries the story. So when you make a decision to retcon most of it, it makes Act 3 of the game feel incredibly hollow. Well, OP, if you think you're so smart, how would you fix it?
Here he goes into complete fanfiction, which in my opinion is terrible, but I won't judge his story writing skills because I don't care. I only wanted to fix what he said that was factually wrong. So let's hear what he would do with this story, and if he says something that is objectively wrong, I will correct it.
I will get to that in a second. Part 2. The Age of Heroes. If you've gotten to Act 3, then you've experienced the ridiculous decision on the writer's part to make Mordegon the seer. Holy shit. Oh my god. Okay. So when the party formally meets the seer, he introduces himself as Morkant, who was Erdwin's old companion. He says that when they were about to fight Kalasmus, Morkant was swayed and eventually corrupted by Kalasmus. However, a tiny bit of goodness survived and separated itself from him to become the seer. What the fuck? Here's where I'm going to mention things that emphasize how bad that decision was. For example, Erdwin and Morkant were pretty pointed parallels to Henrik and Jasper. They trained together at Mount Panglai. Morkant was the brains, and Erdwin was the brawn.
Okay, here he makes a parallel that wasn't really in the game, which is that Erdwin and Morkant are a parallel to Henrik and Jasper, where one was a warrior that stands for nobility, for justice, and was mostly a melee fighter, while the other is a mage, who can use magic, is more prone to the use of magic, and has been corrupted by darkness. Why I don't think this is correct and is factually wrong? For two reasons. First reason, the role don't really coincide, don't really match, because the Luminary isn't just a melee fighter. The Luminary can pretty much use magic. He is not a sorcerer, he is not specifically a mage, a sage, but he's pretty good at using magic and can, we know for certain that he can use even really strong zap spells. So actually the role of the Luminary, combat-wise, is more similar to the role of Jasper, because Jasper too is pretty strong, is a pretty strong knight melee-wise, but can also use some magic, which is not zap, the light, the power of light, but is Zam, the power of darkness. So again, I see Jasper more akin to the Luminary, I know it's a paradox, but combat-wise, their roles are similar, which is a strong melee fighter, which is also a pretty decent magic user. None of them is either the best combat-wise or the best magic-wise. They are a pretty good jack of all trades. While, on the other hand, Hendrik is pretty much only a melee fighter, while Morkant is pretty much only a spell fighter. Even though when he becomes Mordegon, especially in his second form after Yggdrasil's fall, he becomes also pretty strong physically speaking. But I don't... In their original form, so Erdwin the Luminary and Morkant the Mage, that parallel to Hendrik and Jasper just doesn't really stand, because the Luminary is both a fighter and a spellcaster. Hendrik is just a fighter. Morkant is only a spellcaster. Jasper is both a fighter and a spellcaster. So if we have to do a parallel, we should do it between the Luminary and Jasper, which are both spellcasters and fighters, and then you have Hendrik, which is pure melee, and Morkant, which is pure magic, and they don't really match. So again, it makes no sense. And also, we know who Hendrik is. We know what his real parallel is, which is that of Drastan, the hero, the warrior of Erdrick's group. As we saw, Erdrick's group is Akin remembers the pretty standard Dragon Quest III party, which is hero, warrior, mage and sage, where the hero is of course the Luminary, Erdwin, the sage is Serenica, the warrior is Drastan, and the mage is Morkant. Mage is like a sage but can only use offensive magic and not support magic. Now, what is the parallel? Of course, Erdrick, the Dragon Quest hero, is Erdwin and the Luminary. The sage is Serenica. We can see that from her outfit and from the outfit that Serena can wear. Serenica is the sage of Erdwin's party, and the heirs of Serenica are Serena and Veronica, which of course their name, Serenica is a portmanteau of their names. Serena and Veronica are the soul of Serenica, which has been splitted into support magic and attack magic, and I don't know, offensive magic, but offensive maybe in English means just something that can offend someone. Anyway, so yeah, the soul of Serenica has been split into Serena and Veronica, and her power, which was both attack and defense spell, has been divided into the two twins. But when in Act 2 Veronica dies, Serena gets back all Serenica's power in just her body. She has that evolution where she kinds of absorbs the soul of her sister and becomes kind of the embodiment of Serenica herself in one single body, and is thus able to use magic attacks, to use spell attacks, and she gains the ability to use heavy wands. So again, we just have the paralleling of Serenica in Serena and Veronica, and in Act 2 specifically in just Serena. Then we have Drastan, which is the warrior, which is in the present timeline Hendrik. He is the only one that can use Drastan's armor set and sword and shield. He is a pretty much only melee warrior, only melee fighter, even though he knows some healing spells and support spells. And then we have Morkant, which is, speaking of a role, is more akin to Veronica, in the sense that he can only use attack spells, but actually has no parallel in the party of the Luminary, because his soul didn't have an heir, because his soul still exists since he is Mordegon. So there is no equivalent party member, because he didn't die. He's still alive. He has no heirs because he's still there. Now, of course, I'm not saying that Serenica died. She is alive too, but maybe she had heirs, and we don't know. Maybe she was pregnant with Erdwin's children that, after centuries, led to Serena and Veronica. So you can see them as heirs, as the children of the children of the children of the children of their ancient relative. Or maybe, if they're not actual relatives, just as re-embodiments of their souls. Which is why Morkant doesn't have a present counterpart, because he's still a relevant character in the present. And he's the villain.
Before setting out to defeat the Dark One, Erdwin came to our temple to learn from the Wise Ones, who made their homes here even then. The first Grand Master, i.e., accepted him as a disciple, and trained him in the secrets of spiritual realization. But he did not train alone. During his time here, he met someone who would change his fate forever.
Who was this person?
Another of Ai Yi's disciples, a young mage whose talent outshone that of all who had come before. A man named Morkant. Erdwin and Morkant would train together every day, each striving to outstrip the other. Though they were fierce rivals, they became firm friends.
Again, even the parallel doesn't really strike, for the fact that Erdwin and Morkant were rivals and became friends, even though later Morkant betrayed Erdwin, while for Hendrik and Jasper it was the opposite. As Hendrik and Jasper were childhood friends and always had been friends, but Jasper started to feel resentment as he grew older, and so Hendrik take all the glory because he was the most talented one, probably, even though Jasper was diligent and studied really hard and really put 100% what he could do. Hendrik still outshined him in every way possible, which is why Jasper started to feel envy. And this was also fueled by Mordegon himself, which, when he became Carnelian, he used Jasper's envy and alimented and fueled it on purpose, so that Jasper would end up hating his childhood friend.
Before setting out, they carved an inscription into this stone, a pledge of eternal friendship. It has been a treasure of ours ever since.
Another parallel lies towards the very end of the game. After completing the Echo Chamber quests, your reward is fighting a Golden Calasmus clone, who is way more powerful than the actual boss. When it is defeated, it reveals itself as the God of Time, or the Friend of Time. The friend reveals that Calasmus is a Toggle, and that they are two sides of the same coin. Where have we heard that before? The friend also says that Calasmus chose to be evil. Where have we heard that before too? The common denominator here is choice. Therefore, It would have made more sense for Morkant to have been inherently selfish and envious of Erdwin. On the other hand, we also have a dying Serenica being transformed into the Timekeeper, who is essentially a large Tokkul. Why? Why not make her the Seer? The Arborean mantra is to protect the Luminary for as long as the sages live. What better way to carry that out than to have Serenica exist as a being of multiple incarnations? To explain it in linear terms, Morkant and Erdwin train together as young men. Erdwin is the destined hero, and Morkant is jealous. The party is formed, and they journey to fight Kalasmus.
Here we just saw Drastan, which is the ancient character which Hendrik actually represents in the present. So we have Serenica, which is represented by Veronica and Serena, Drastan, which is represented by Hendrik, and of course Erdwin, which is we have the Luminary, which is the new embodiment of Erdwin, which is the last Luminary before our hero.
Journey to fight Kalasmus. Before Erdwin can deliver the final blow, Kalasmus speaks to Morkant and lights the fire under his ass to backstab him. He does not possess him. Morkant simply agrees, and takes the opportunity. His powers amplify greatly, and he becomes Mordegon. This act of selfishness also allows Kalasmus to hang on by a thread. The choices of evil sustain him. So Serenica and the Watchers trap him in the lantern, and send him to fuck off in space. The whole thing with Serenica trying to use the Sword of Light like an idiot doesn't happen. She dies of natural with Serenica trying to use the sword.
Okay, I didn't read this line when I first watched the video. Yeah, there's a Judgment Sword, which of course isn't effective, but even if somehow she had the Sword of Light, which she actually had because she brought it back to Yggdrasil, she wouldn't be able to destroy the Time Sphere, because she doesn't have the power of the Luminary yet.
Sword of Light like an idiot doesn't happen. She dies of natural causes or exertion or something, and then becomes the Seer, because her job as a Sage of Arborea is not done yet. Ages pass and now we are in the game's present. Mordegon whips the...
Yeah, he's just talking about his fanfiction where Serenica is the Seer, which doesn't really make sense. Why would she be the Seer? The Seer... Why the Seer knows everything about Mordegon? Because the Seer is Mordegon. They're like... if one person had the same knowledge, the same brain knowledge-wise, but had different brains as of behavior. So you're like, everything that one knows, the other knows too, but they fight for different goals, which in the case of Mordegon is conquering the world and letting darkness reign. In the case of the Seer is to fight Mordegon and help the Luminary, because the Seer is the good side of Mordegon. It wouldn't make sense for the Seer to be Serenica. Of course, if Serenica happened to be the Seer, the story would be different, but again, that's an opinion. I mean, I can't fix an opinion. I can just tell why it wouldn't work the way the things are. To make that work, you should have to change things, which you could, but why?
The party's ass and destroys Yggdrasil, gaining ultimate power. Kalasmus gets a whiff of this and feels threatened. He begins to descend. Mordegon also feels threatened by Kalasmus in turn.
Tired ass showgirl.
Showgirl, at least I am a showgirl, bitch! Go back to Party City where you belong!
So he flies out in that one scene and breaks the lantern. This is where things would diverge. Because Kalasmus is essentially a god, it would make more sense for him to be an astral body. The breaking of the lantern actually frees him. He's able to appear temporarily on Earth in a physical form, but only for a short time. After he flexes and swings his large penis around, he ascends and waits for Mordegon to be defeated, so he can step in as the real Dark Lord, like in the Age of Heroes. Part 3. Wow, was Veronica fucked over, or what?
Again, this is just fanfiction. He is saying what he would want the story to be, and I have nothing to say about that because there's nothing to fix. I just think it's a bad idea, but it's not like I can prove it to be bad. I just don't like it.
If you remember, during the Seer's identity reveal, there was a moment where Serena and Veronica meditate and tap into their holy connection to Yggdrasil, temporarily becoming a literal extension of the tree. This is never mentioned again. If Serena and Veronica are at this level of divinity, why is it impossible to regrow her leaf, or preserve her soul or something? Its last vestiges were clearly there when the party finds her in Arborea, hanging around to give them that vision of how they were sent off to safety. There's also the scene where Father Benedictus dreams of Veronica and the flute. Veronica is a big fucking deal. She and Serena are arguably more holy than the luminary. He can talk to the roots, but they can fucking become the roots. Holy shit. But yeah, those scenes where Father Benedictus recounts his dreams of her, and the other thing with her memory in her staff, shows her soul was hanging around to a certain extent. Why not just bring her back, especially since everything that happened in Act 3 could have easily happened in the main timeline. This also adds more merit to my idea for Serenica being the Seer. The Seer is an embodiment of memory. Serena and Veronica are reincarnations of Serenica. Together, they have the power to summon old memories. This is literally writing itself.
Okay, he talks about the power that Serena and Veronica have. I say Serena because Serena is actually, and Veronica too, are actually Italian names. So that's we pronounce it in Italy. So I was saying, Serena and Veronica do not have the power to become a branch of Yggdrasil at their own will. If we remember, it was the Seer that made them do that. Without the Seer, they couldn't have done it. So of course, it's also somewhere in them, because the Seer wouldn't be able to do that with, I don't know, Eric and Silvando, for example. But at the same time, isn't really something they can do with ease, just like it was nothing. They're not divine. Serenica was not divine to begin with. She became something kind of divine-like when she became the timekeeper, but Serena is just a sage. A legendary sage that lived in the Age of Heroes, but other than being a powerful sorcerer, a powerful mage, a powerful sage, she doesn't really have anything special. I mean, she's strong, but she's just a strong human, that's what I'm saying. Just like Serena and Veronica. Now, of course, there is this mystical kind of thing where Serena and Veronica are her heirs, and so the soul of Serenica kind of lives in them, which is why Serena was able to absorb Veronica's self, Veronica's soul, and become one again. But they're still humans, they're not gods, which is why Veronica can die. When her physical body dies, she dies. She can't go back because because her body died. It's just that her body died, she's dead, she can't come back. Now, about this thing about her soul still being there, it isn't really like that. We just know that, for all we know, the vision the hero has about her death may just be some of her spells. She just made a spell to let her friends see her final moments. She is a powerful mage, she probably can do that. Or it's just what we see from Yggdrasil roots since the start of the game, like we saw the dog man in the forest, like we can watch the cutscenes again in the Accademia de Notre Dame de Medaille, or however is it called. So it's not like they're time gods or anything. They can just revive at their will or go back into time at their will. They're powerful sages, they're powerful mages, they're powerful sorcerers, but that's where it ends. They have a connection and Serenica becomes the timekeeper, but there's nothing actually more than that. Once Serenica is the timekeeper, she's not a god, she just has the role of keeping time under control and protecting the time sphere. It's not like she can control time. She couldn't even destroy the time sphere to begin with. So he is really overrating what Veronica, Serena, and Serenica can do. They're just faithful companions of Erdwin in the case of Serenica and of the Luminary in the case of Veronica and Serena. They're powerful sages, and that's where it ends. There's nothing more than that. They're not even the chosen ones, because as we saw, Serenica didn't have the power of the Luminary, so she couldn't really do anything to save Erdwin by destroying the time sphere. They just don't have that power, and the power they had to relive the memories of the past was through the Seer, which, let's remember, is Morkant. So it's someone. He is someone that has lived in that age, remembers those things, watched those things in first person with his eyes, and that's the memories we see. So actually, we can say that while Veronica and Serena were the medium, were the tools to show those memories from the past to the party, it was actually most of the Seer work. It was mostly the Seer's work, which he just used Veronica and Serena, which have this kind of link with Yggdrasil as tools to let them become branches of Yggdrasil and show to the party his memories, the memories of Morkant, the memories of the Seer.
My idea is that Veronica could return as a parallel for the Luminary. As he is a representation of life and light, she could be a representation of shadow and spirit. This would completely redefine the notions of darkness and death in the game. Darkness is already not an inherently evil thing, since Rab can freely use dark magic in battle. What would happen is that evil and darkness would be distinguished between. Darkness is a natural inevitability. When the sun sets, the moon rises. Evil, however, can always be chosen. Yin and Yang, despite not being explicitly mentioned, is a huge theme in this game. But OP, doesn't this mean Kalasmus can never truly be defeated? In a sense, my idea for Veronica's return would involve sacrificing the swords of shadow and light in some kind of ritual. The two forces cancel out and create an energy equilibrium that can revive the
Again, this is all fanfiction. I can't really reply to this.
On a much grander scale. Instead of defeating Kalasmus, Veronica and the Luminary would cancel out his darkness and use that resulting energy equilibrium to bring back.
He's just writing an entirely different story, which I don't like.
People back from the dead. Will there be something else in the future like Kalasmus? Possibly. The point is that history would be rewritten. Serenica would be able to pass on in peace. There would be more weight behind Jasper and Henrik's final confrontation. Moreover, the Luminary would be redefined as a force, and not just one super special chosen boy. It always annoyed me that the importance of the other party members was not treated as seriously as the Luminary himself, when they all shine their own special light. Also, he literally would not have been able to do anything without a party. That's the point. No one can accomplish anything alone. The very last cutscene of the game in particular is so annoying with—
Okay, I wanted to say something about yeah, the light and darkness thing. Again, as I said, it's just his fanfiction. There's no way I can disprove what he said, because it's just how he would make things work in his head. But yeah, the fact that darkness isn't inherently evil, I don't know, in Dragon Quest, darkness has always been associated with evil. It's kind of a thing for the whole series. It's a theme of light versus darkness, good versus evil, day versus night. In Dragon Quest Heroes, he made the example of when day sets, night comes, right? And night isn't something evil. Yeah, but for example, in Dragon Quest Heroes, which is a Dragon Quest, even though it's just a spin-off, the faction of evil is called, if I remember correctly, Children of the Night, or something like that. It's always been like that in Dragon Quest. So to just completely change the story, piece on the lore, on the tradition of the symbols and the value they hold in the whole series, and just say darkness isn't evil, Veronica should represent darkness, it's just, again, fanfiction, which I don't really like. And also there was another thing about okay, I'm not really remembering it right now. Oh yeah, so would Kalasmos never be defeated? It depends. Again, he was talking about his story, I'll talk about actual story. Kalasmos has been defeated, and at that time Kalasmos was kind of the embodiment of darkness. Kalasmos is dead as a being, as a person in a sense, but darkness isn't, which is why, as we know, Dragon Quest XI is a prequel to Dragon Quest III, and by just knowing the rest of the series, we know that once in a while darkness rises, and when darkness rises, an hero will rise to defeat it. Which is why after Dragon Quest XI there is Dragon Quest III, and the darkness is represented by Zoma. Then there is Dragon Quest I, and the darkness is represented by the Dragon Lord. And then there is Dragon Quest II, where the darkness is represented by Hargon and Malroth. And I won't talk about the rest of the saga, because it is not connected story-wise. So it's just kind of its own thing, while 11, 3, 1, and 2 are deeply connected and happen one before the other. Oops. Sorry. Okay.
I get why Serena and Veronica and the Luminary are there, but why not have the rest of the party? It's not like they didn't do anything to contribute to, oh I don't know, saving the fucking universe. But whatever. Let's wrap up with a quick recap. Act 3 sucks because...
About this just last thing about why there were only Veronica and Verena, Veronica and Verena, Veronica and Serena. I get his gripe, his dislike for the choice. I would argue that yes, it would have been nice to see all of them there. But more than the whole party, maybe I would argue that Hendrik was supposed to be there, as Hendrik was the re-embodiment of Drastan. So yeah, I wasn't really bothered by that choice. I can see why it was, but I don't think it's that important. I don't agree with the fact that the importance of the whole party was diminished. Again, he didn't say something straight out wrong this time. I'm just replying to his opinion with my opinion. And if they're both just opinions, they can of course differ. What I wanted to clarify were just the lies, the wrong facts that he didn't understand about the story. And there is one pretty important last thing that I will cover after his video finishes.
The importance of the party as a cohesive team and a found family is diminished. The time travel is not actually time travel.
Wrong.
The Luminary fucks off in an alternate reality and leaves the real party behind.
Wrong.
Serenica being the timekeeper is stupid. Mordegon
Opinion.
being the seer is stupid. Everyone's character development is retcon.
True.
The writer isn't exactly sure how holy and powerful Yggdrasil is supposed to be.
Yggdrasil is, of course, powerful and holy, but it can be defeated. That's the point. That's why Mordegon killed it. That's why Yggdrasil fell. And that's why the Luminary was stripped of its power. The Luminary, actually, for a short part of history, wasn't the Luminary anymore. And that's probably the moment in history when we, story-wise, were most vulnerable. Like, we have said that the Luminary is the chosen one. Yeah, but after the fall of Yggdrasil, and after the Luminary had been stripped of its power, we aren't the chosen ones anymore. We were the chosen ones, but we've been defeated. Evil has won, and now we are not protected by Yggdrasil anymore, and may die like any human being. So, in a sense, it makes Act 2 even more important, because that's the point in the story where the hero didn't have fate on his side, where the hero didn't have a holy protection, because that holy protection was dead to begin with, and a human hero managed to restore it without that protection that he saved himself by not using those holy powers. So yeah, that's a great thing about Act 2, that we aren't actually the chosen ones anymore. We are degraded to being regular human beings, and we don't have destiny and the gods on our side anymore, because we have been stripped of that power. So yeah, I don't see this point, because I know how holy and powerful Yggdrasil is. As long as it is there, it will protect the Luminary and act as a holy power to let him win in his fights. But when Yggdrasil herself is defeated, that protection wears off. So everything that the hero did in Act 2, he did with his own strength, and not with a power that wasn't there anymore.
Veronica and Serena can turn into Yggdrasil roots, and it is never fucking mentioned again. Are you kidding?
Here again, it's, in my opinion, it was mostly the Seer's powers that did that. He couldn't have done that with other people. He couldn't just take Rab and Jade and transform them into Yggdrasil roots. He had to use Veronica and Serena, which have this ancestral link to Yggdrasil, to Arborea, to Serenica. So they kind of are connected to Yggdrasil in a way, but it's not a power they have. It's something that makes them the right tool for that spell that the Seer used to work.
My ideas are better because they are. Anyway, thanks for watching. I still really love the game despite all of that, and will continue to replay it, because I adore these characters in this world, and you should too. Again, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.
Or don't. I don't give a shit.
Okay, in the last seconds there is a comedy part, but we'll just ignore it. Now, there is something that I didn't have the chance to talk about during the video, which is why what actually happens in the ending. because he didn't talk about that, because he probably didn't get what happened. So we can I'll take a comment I wrote under his video explaining my point of view. Wait a sec. Okay, I'll take this comment. Okay, if we had to summarize the story of Dragon Quest XI, how things went, it will be like this. At first, let's call it chapter 1, there is Erdwin Sage, okay? Erdwin is killed, Morkant is corrupted and becomes Mordegon, and after that, and of course Serenica becomes the Timekeeper, and after that centuries pass. Here, Kalasmos, of course, is sealed and sent into space. Why doesn't Mordegon conquer the world straight as soon as he can? Because he knows that the Luminary, sooner or later, will be back, and he knows that once he's back, he will have the upper hand. And with he, I mean the Luminary. Because, of course, no one will say to other people that the Luminary is back. It will be kept under a radar as an information. The Luminary will have the advantage of not knowing, because Mordegon wouldn't know when the Luminary will be back, where the Luminary will be back, how the Luminary will be back, who the Luminary will be. So Mordegon, if he conquered the world from straight as soon as Kalasmos was sealed, he would have to live in the fear of the Luminary being back and ending his reign. What he does is he waits for centuries to kill the Luminary and then become the conqueror of the world, the king of the world, the Dark Lord of the world. So he can be the Lord of Shadows without worrying about the Luminary anymore. So this is what happened in chapter 1. What happens in the past, in the Age of Heroes. Erdwin gets killed, Morkant becomes Mordegon, Kalasmos is sealed, Serenica becomes the Timekeeper, centuries pass in relative peace. Chapter 2. Hero is born, and at his birth, Dandrasil is attacked, but the hero survives. But Mordegon knows this, which is why he just possesses Carnelian and stays quiet and doesn't again conquer the world after the birth of the hero. But Mordegon knows the hero is alive, but doesn't know who he is and where he is. Of course, the hero becomes 16 by living in his quiet village, and then Dragon Quest XI starts. All of the first act of Dragon Quest XI goes on. At the end, hero reaches Yggdrasil, and this is the start of chapter 3. So, chapter 1, Age of Heroes. Chapter 2, the birth of the hero until the fall of Yggdrasil. Chapter 3, Mordegon wins. Kalasmos is no longer a threat because Kalasmos is destroyed. His physical body is destroyed by Mordegon, and thus Kalasmos just stays powerless Tokkul. But at the end of all this stuff, of all these things, the hero defeats Mordegon. So chapter 3 is Act 2. So chapter 1, Age of Heroes. Chapter 2, the Yacht of the Hero and Act 1. Chapter 3, Act 2. Then we have chapter 4, which is the small part between the defeat of Mordegon and the time where the hero goes back in time. So it's just the part where we find the time wheel, we go to the Tower of Lost Time, we find the Timekeeper, and we choose to go back in time to try and save the world. So we have Chapter 1, Age of Heroes, Chapter 2, Act 1 and Childhood, Chapter 3, Act 2, Chapter 4, after the defeat of Mordegon. We go back into time, and Chapter 4 and Chapter 3 of this storyline are erased, and we go back to Chapter 2. And we prevent the fall of Yggdrasil. Here we have what I call Chapter 2b. So the new reality where Yggdrasil didn't fall, but it's still Act 1 in a sense, because Act 2 never happened. So Act 3 is basically Act 1, an Act 1 where Act 2 never happened. So in Chapter 2b, the hero defeats Mordegon. Erdwin's lantern isn't destroyed by Mordegon, which is why Kalasmos comes back. The hero defeats Kalasmos, and here the important part, the hero gives the power of the Luminary to Serenica. Serenica can now go back in time to the time when Erdwin was killed, because now Serenica is the Luminary. The hero chooses on his own will to concede, to gift that power to Serenica so that she is the Luminary and she can go back in time and prevent Erdwin's death. What does that mean? It means that Dragon Quest XI never happened, because we have Chapter 1b. The last chapter is actually Chapter 1b, which is a Chapter 1 where Erdwin wasn't murdered by Mordegon, by Morkant, because Serenica saves him, because there are two luminaries in the Age of Heroes at the end, because Serenica was gifted the power of the Luminary by the Luminary of the Future, which doesn't exist anymore. Serenica saves Erdwin, Erdwin defeats Kalasmos, Mordegon was either defeated when he was still Morkant, or was never corrupted to begin with, because we see that Morkant was corrupted by Kalasmos' whispers. Maybe he was weak and chose to follow that corruption in a sense, but it wasn't his free will. Without Kalasmos, Morkant wouldn't have done that. So maybe even if they just told Morkant to not come to the final fight and he wasn't there, he would have just be in a town drinking a beer and not changing the future of the world forever. So yeah, Mordegon is either defeated or just left alone and isn't relevant in the fight against Kalasmos, and Erdwin is finally able to defeat Kalasmos. What does it mean? That Kalasmos is no longer a threat, Mordegon either wasn't born or was defeated as soon as he was born, because he wasn't able to kill Erdwin through surprise, through an attack that Erdwin didn't expect. And the absence of these two threats led to a timeline where the Luminary of Dragon Quest XI wasn't necessary anymore. He never existed, he was never born. Which is what leads to the consequence that the future that we lived through our Luminary, through his companions, through Serenica, through Serena, Veronica, Hendrik, Jade, Sylvando, Rab, never existed, because it was deleted when Serenica went back in time, destroyed the time sphere, and went to save Erdwin, just as we deleted Act 2 when we went back in time to prevent Yggdrasil's fall. So we have Age of Heroes, Act 1, Act 2. We erase Act 2, we defeat Kalasmos, we give the power of the Luminary to Serenica, that goes back in time to the Age of Heroes, and erases the story of the whole game. That I can understand why that may be bad, why that may not be liked. But first, how can I know that this is the truth and I'm not making things up? It's the title of the game. Echoes of an elusive age. And in English it may not be that clear, but in Japanese it's In Search of Lost Time, the translation. Lost Time. Why Lost Time? In Italian it's Echi di un'era perduta, which means echoes of a lost age. In Spanish is ecos de una época perdida, or something like that. I speak a bit of Spanish, but not that much. Which is, again, echoes of a lost time. What is that lost time? Why lost time? It's the whole game. The whole game, it's a lost time. It's an adventure that ended up never existing for the greater good, which is to defeat Kalasmos back at its source, back when Erdwin could do it in the Age of Heroes. So all the adventure that we lived, Serenica erased it to save the world from the tragic events that would have happened if the timeline went the way it did in Dragon Quest XI. So our adventure in the final timeline never happened, which is sad, and you may dislike it because you would say, so everything I did was for no reason, everything I did never happened. No, that's what makes it amazing, in my opinion, because we know that it happened, that it's lost in time, but it had to exist for the world to be fixed and erase the existence of those tragedies. It's thanks to us, it's thanks to the luminary of a future that never existed that Erdwin could win against Kalasmos. And at the end we have the scene where I'll just show it to you guys. Dragon Quest 3 Foreshadow. Dragon Quest 11 Ending Erdrick. Let's see. We have this scene. Yeah, we see here that Serenica meets that Serenica meets Erdwin again, and they're both luminaries. You saw the marks on their hands. And then there is this final scene. What is this picture? We see Yggdrasil. We see what looks like Eric by the spiky hair. We see what looks like Veronica by the fact that she's really short and has a staff. We see Rab, we see Jade, we see probably this is Sylvando, this is the Luminary, this is Serena, and this is Hendrik. We see our 8 characters in this picture. What is this picture? We can even see that it's written. It's a book. It's a book where we see Yggdrasil and the Yggdragon that protects it. We see this lady. This book is one of 2. You can see here there is a green book and the Red Book. Probably the Green Book is the story of Erdwin in the Age of Heroes, and the Red Book is the story of our luminary of Dragon Quest XI. And then we see that this woman
Cooey. Wakey, wakey, rise and shine. Morning, my darling. It's time to get up. Today's a very important day.
we see the beginning of Dragon Quest III. What can this mean? What it means is that when Serenica went back in time and saved Erdwin in the Age of Heroes, and thus Erdwin won, Kalasmos was defeated, Mordegon never existed, blah blah blah, yada yada yada, she didn't forget the story of those brave heroes that allowed her to fix the whole timeline. And I stress the word fix, not change the alternative universe, not make a different timeline, fix the timeline. Even though the price that heroes had to pay to save the world was to never have been existed. It's almost tragic in a sense, it's sad. It may look at first like a everyone's happy, everyone leaves ending, but it's not like that. It's everyone's not even born, because Serenica just changed the flow of time, just changed the history of the world by doing something that prevented a lot of tragic events to happen. So just as by erasing Act 2 we prevented a lot of sad storylines from happening, like, as I said, the Hotto storyline, the Lonalulu storyline, I'd say the Jasper storyline, even though Act 3 was even sadder about Jasper. So we prevented a lot of deaths and suffering. Of course, Cobblestone was destroyed, rebuilt, was the basis for humanity. We see the fortress of humanity. We even see the first scene where a small child, a small girl enters a church, and in that church everyone is dead. We prevented all that, and we prevented all those bad things, all those tragedies from happening thanks to Act 3 by retconning, by fixing Act 2. What Serenica does is the same, except in an even bigger scale. She goes back into time, saves Erdwin, and thus the whole storyline of Dragon Quest XI ends up not existing, thanks to our heroes that fought and saved the world only to not be remembered and to not be part of history, which is why that's the echo of a lost age. Those are echoes of an elusive age. Those are echoes of a lost time. That's why we are in the Japanese subtitle in search of a lost time. That's the lost time that we live, so that Serenica can go back, fix the timeline, and find the way to not let all of that happen. Because even though we had a lot of funny moments, even though we grew attached to all those characters, even though we loved that story was full of tragedies, and we shouldn't forget that. Which is why Serenica did the right thing, was able to prevent it thanks to us, which gave this power to her. So yeah, it's sad, it's tragic. We fought, we had a long odyssey, we had countless adventures only to end up not existing in the end. Would you do something good if there was no glory behind it. Even Jasper's storyline shows us that it's easy to be an hero when you get all the glory, which is why Jasper grows up holding resentment against Hendrik, because Hendrik takes all the honors and the glory, while Jasper feels ignored. Would you still be an hero if you knew that you would be ignored, if you knew that you would be unknown and nobody would do what you did? Nobody would know what you did. It's really a tricky answer that I can't really give an honest answer if I had to answer to that myself. But the Luminary, the hero, did that. The Luminary, for the greater good, chose to not let evil take root from the start. Chose to give the Luminary's power to Serenica and allow her to spare countless deaths and a huge amount of pain and suffering to the world and change its history forever, even if that history means that his adventure won't exist anymore, which is the greatest of sacrifice. He sacrifices his existence for the greater good, which is the proof that he is the chosen one and the embodiment of light and of what is good, even when it's against his own interests. So yeah, Serena goes back into time. Let's go back to the books we just saw. We can assume that since Serenica went back into time, and we know that the person that goes back in time keeps her memories, keeps her knowledge, keeps her tools, keeps what they learned. We also know that Serenica is the only person to know of their struggle, to know of their adventure, to know of what they did. So what she did once she was back in the past, after she saved the world by defeating Kalasmos and thus making a world, creating a world, creating the world, because it's only one where all of it didn't happen. She writes a book, she writes a legend, a fairy tale in a sense, because it never existed, about these heroes that she knows they existed, but they are lost in history. They are echoes of a lost age. So it was there since the beginning. It's right there in the subtitle, and it's majestic. It's sad, it's heroic, it's legendary, it's amazing. I love this ending and how it wraps up. And yes, it's sad, yes, you may not like it, but it was how it was taught, and we sacrificed our own world, and with that I mean we sacrificed the age in which we lived in to go back in time, defeat darkness at its roots, and create a new age when the threat of Kalasmos doesn't exist. And of course, after the Age of Heroes, then thanks to Dragon Quest XI, there is not Dragon Quest XI, but we have Dragon Quest III. Okay, so instead of instead of Age of Heroes Dragon Quest XI, the timeline becomes Age of Heroes Dragon Quest III. But and of course, then we have a new Luminary, which is Erdrick, and a new evil, which is Zoma, and Baramos before him. But Kalasmos was defeated. For what we know, maybe we granted peace for a longer time. Maybe there was more time between Age of Heroes and Dragon Quest III than the time there was between Age of Heroes and Dragon Quest XI. But we know that we defeated Kalasmos, and of course darkness will rise again, but a new Luminary will rise again to defeat it. What we did is defeat one of these embodiments of darkness at its roots, thanks to our actions that ended up not existing. So we weren't even able to get all the glory, but we survived in the memories. We survived in the book that Serenica wrote, which is An Echo of a Lost Age. That's all I had to say about the mistakes of that video, which actually became kind of a lore video on its own, which explained the ending in detail. I know it's really long. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something new that you didn't know. Sorry because of sorry for the not really entertaining format, but yeah, I hope you appreciated this history. I hope that you understood what was going on in Dragon Quest XI, and I hope that you enjoy this newfound knowledge, and that you will appreciate more Act 3, even if you, before watching this video, thought it was terrible. And you can still think it was terrible, or at this point you can think that the whole Dragon Quest XI was terrible, since, as we saw, it's not just Act 2 that stopped existing, but it's the whole game. But at least you now know the meaning behind all that, because if the game just stopped at the end of Act 2, the name Echoes of an Elusive Age, In Search of a Lost Time, Echoes of a Lost Age, all the slightly different subtitles in the different languages wouldn't mean anything, because we just have our regular straight timeline adventure, and I feel that the way it is handled makes it even sadder and in a way tragic. Have a good time. Goodbye. Ciao.